right on the heels of this, right before this, where does he go? He goes to the Mount of Transfiguration. Okay? And he reveals himself to Peter, James, and John. Where does he go for this? He goes to Mount Hermon, elevation about 6,800 feet. It's the tallest mountain in Israel, in the Golan Heights. Okay, we'll call it the Golan Heights. And he goes there, and those of you that have been to Israel know that in that territory is what they call the gates of hell. It's a place called Banias, where the god Pan was worshipped, and also where Zeus was worshipped. Those of you that have been there, you know that they call it the gates of hell, and there was child worship, there was child sacrifice that was done there. And it's that area, that geography that Yeshua goes to transfigure, to show his disciples who he really is. He's transfigured before them. It's cosmic geography. He's saying, look, I'm taking back these places. These places are where I'm going to take back. Now, we mentioned earlier the wilderness. So what does Yeshua do? The two places that are the most foreboding, the water and the wilderness. Matthew 4, where does he go? When he's first released to minister, where does Yeshua end up? He ends up in the wilderness. He's taken to the wilderness. There to be tempted by who? The evil one. Okay? So he has to go to the wilderness. And then, who comes and ministers to him? Angels do. They're always there. They're always there. Go back and read the gospel accounts and look at how many times angels are present. They're all over the place when you start looking, because of who he is and the entourage around him. Yeah.
So then that whole scripture about when Yeshua says, upon this rock I will build my kingdom, it's not about Peter. It was a play on words, but it was this rock, meaning that was where all that Pan worship was going on.
Exactly. I'm taking back spiritual. Exactly. I'm taking back spiritual territory.
And the church just took that and went.
It's not about Peter. Look,
doctrine about.
We know Peter.
When he said the keys of the kingdom, because the keys of the kingdom are all about getting to.
Right, because Peter's going to be a problem later on.
A few times.
Peter's going to deny him later on.
3 verses later.
It says, get behind me, Satan. Because the plan you have is the one Satan would want to use.
Right.
So earlier he says, that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. He says, flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. This is spiritually revealed.
That's the rock, faith.
Yeah. So it's not about Peter. It's about this cosmos taking back this territory. Everywhere that Yeshua goes, please hear this, everywhere he goes is theologically that it's important from the Hebrew Scripture perspective. He's taking back territory. And he's putting on notice demonic forces to say, hey, I'm here, and this is eventually going to be my territory. Again, you guys have been messing it up and screwing it up enough already. And I'm going to drive out these demonic forces, and I'm going to set things right. So he puts them on notice by saying to the evil one, hey, and where does he quote from? All through that little area. Deuteronomy 6 through 8. Go back and look at Deuteronomy 6 through 8. There's a reason. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, I always thought that was more like a metaphor on this rock. I never thought of it as actually being a land.
No, it's a rock.
There is, if you go today, if you go there today, up to the Golan Heights, to that area, there's a huge mountain up there, and there's actually a cave that's dedicated, and there's still niches in the rock dedicated to the god Pan.
But the way it was worded, I used to get the impression that it was when he was asking Peter, who do people think I am, or whatever, you are the Christ. And I thought that was what he was referring to on this rock, not Peter, but upon the belief and the faith that he
No, I think it's built, I actually take it that it's built on Peter's confession. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God, on this rock.
It came from God.
Yeah, because if you go back to the Psalms, in the Psalms, who is called the rock? All the way through it. Go to the end of Deuteronomy. At the end of Deuteronomy, it says God is our rock. And all the way through the Psalms, he's a rock.
Did Peter get his name after that, or because
Well, the name Petros does mean rock, okay?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, but
So
I
there's
just
a-
felt like it was that faith, that confession, that's what the rock was.
Now, the confession is that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God.
Yeah.
That's the rock. That confession is,
Okay.
that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God.
But the rock is also the rock.
The rock is also a physical place.
Is-
He wants to take back this earth. So he's saying, hey, look, he goes to a specific place that was loaded with implications for other gods. Look, let me say it this way. Everything is about taking back dominion from other gods. And one of these days, he's going to take back the whole world.
Yes.
So what does Yeshua do? He reconstitutes, in a sense, the nation of Israel by picking how many disciples? Well, he says, look, we are going to take back. Now we're going to go do what Israel in the past should have done. And he sends out, not by accident, he takes 70. Go look at the numbers. The numbers he's picking are symbolic. He picks 12 disciples, then he picks 70, and he sends out the 70, and the 70 say what? Hey, we went out, we had power over the demonic forces. But 70 goes back to the nations in the time of the Tower of Babel. So he's saying, look, we're going to go back before, and we're going to work it all the way back. And here's the thing. I'm taking back everything that belonged to me. It always did belong to me, but I wasn't actively here controlling it. Now I'm going to take it back. And every place Yeshua goes, every place he goes is significant. He goes to the temple, extremely significant. He goes to Samaria. He goes to Mount Hermon. All these places are theologically significant places for him saying, we're taking back territory that belongs to me. Yeah.
The cross was actually a covert operation.
Yes.
Like Satan had known it would never happen.
Absolutely.
Just like today, Satan, all this trouble in the Mideast of Israel, Satan is trying to prevent Yeshua from coming back and sitting on David's throne.
Yes. Absolutely. It's all been about this struggle for the reunification of God's kingdom. The reunification, in other words, on earth as it is in heaven. Your kingdom come, it will be done. The kingdom coming here. So he puts people on notice, and those in the Elohim of this world on notice that he's coming back. I came one time, I'm coming back. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, going back to the rock, it said the cornerstone that the builders rejected is what it was built for, and he was that cornerstone.
He was.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely, he's the cornerstone. Hold on, one right here and then come back to you. Go
And I
ahead.
think too, to kind of piggyback on Carrie's question, when you think about Hebrew words have 4 meanings. So we've got the literal meaning, and then we've got the spiritual meaning, and all of those different meanings. So the rest of that verse was, upon this rock I shall build my assembly, and the gates of hell cannot prevail against it. The gates of hell was what they called this entire cliff.
I never knew that geographically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a huge cliff, and then there's these altars, you still see them, where
Yep.
they had the gods of Pan, and then they sacrificed the children, and their blood would run down the stream, which is actually becomes the beginnings of the Jordan River, comes from up there too. So I mean, it's just so loaded with implications. It's staggering. When you actually stand there and you see all of that, you're going like, oh, well, I get it. I get it.
Most people, I guess some people.
You can look it up online. You can
Of course, no,
Google
I
it.
believe it's just that you never knew that. You're going to take it on the faith part. You know?
Right, no, and that's why, yeah. I think
And
if
the
you-
other thing, a play on Peter's name, I mean, Pater in Hebrew is the mouth that opens. And so when the firstborn, that Pater's the womb, opens the womb. So in Peter was the first one that acknowledged Yeshua as God. So I mean, there's so many layers to that verse. It's just staggering.
Wow, that is amazing.
A lot of stuff there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So what I want us to see, though, is this. The big picture of the scriptures, and I think this is what we've missed, is that everything is about him taking back this world, this earth, for his dominion. Yeah.
In Psalm 68, you brought that up about John 15. It says that a mountain of God is the mountain of Bashan. A mountain of many peaks is the mountain of Bashan. Why do you fume and envy within you, mountains of many peaks? This is the mountain which God desires to dwell in. So taking it back over.
Yeah, taking back my mountain.
Awesome.
And if you go to the southern steps of the temple, it says that as the mountains are around Jerusalem, so the Lord is around his people. If you sit there at the southern steps, all around you is this mountain range. And he's just basically saying, this is where I dwell. This is where I live. And if you think about the places where God manifests himself, he talks about the Mount of Olives. So if you look at the Hebrew scriptures, it says one day the Mount of Olives, he'll come back to the Mount of Olives, it will split, and there'll be a valley that goes right down the middle of it. So he's going to split the Mount of Olives. Then he talks about, he comes down to Mount Sinai. He goes to Mount Hermon to reveal himself, because mountains were the place in the ancient Near Eastern mind that one would encounter the Elohim. You would go up, they would come down. And so, by the way, and I don't have time, we don't have time to get into this right now, I'll get this a little later, but this three times in the apostolic scriptures, it says that the Torah was mediated by angels. Okay? Just very offhanded references. Okay? And the Torah was mediated by angels. You're going, well, how could that be? Well, hold on. If he is who we think he is, then everywhere he goes, there's always an entourage of angels around him. So he would never go anywhere that there wouldn't be angels. Everywhere Yeshua goes, there's angels. And he, in fact, he says to Pilate at one point, I could call 10 legions and they'd be here like that. It's not a big deal. If you knew who I was, this is how you know that I'm voluntarily doing this. So it's not a big, I'm the captain of the army of God. So not a big deal. I got chariots and we have arrows and we have chariots, we have arrows, we have swords. We can fly on the wings of the wind so fast you'll never even see us. We're stealth. And angel of the Lord, like we said, kills 185,000 Assyrians in one night. That's one night's work.
I wish you'd start working on Iran.
I mean, so it's one of those things that it doesn't take him, it's no big deal. He can, and by the way, understand this. So this is one of the things I had never understood until I started really trying to work through Heiser on what he's doing with this concept, is that the conquest of Canaan was about the destruction of the evil Elohim, the evil demonic forces. Okay, if you understand Genesis 6:1-4, think about two texts really quick. We gotta go. When the children of Israel go into the promised land, they send out the 12 spies and they say, we got a problem. There are Nephilim there, and they are descendants of the Anakim. These people are huge. Now they overestimate their size a little bit. They say we're like grasshoppers. But point being, they were big people. Okay? Because they are the offspring of humanity and demonic forces. That sounds a little bit like the Twilight Zone. Right now I should be hearing, welcome to the Twilight Zone. Now, lest you think, okay, so now we have the issue of the conquest of Canaan is to drive out these Anakim, these large people. This is why. Now, here's the problem. Even when Israel drives out the Anakim and these large people, we know that there were some of these large people, the text tells us, in Gath, Gaza, and Ashdod. Well, what do you know? David comes along, and there's a guy named Goliath. And it turns out he's a really big dude. He's a really big guy. Now, depending on how you take the Septuagint says he was about 6'9". The Masoretic text says he was about 9'9". Okay? If the average Israelite, we believe the average Israelite was somewhere between 5 feet, 5 and 5.5. Okay, somewhere 5 to 5.5 feet. So a guy 6'9" would look pretty huge to you. Okay. Even today we say a 6'9" person is a good,
He's not short. He's not short.
not short, but if you're 5 feet and you're looking at a person who's 6'9", they're head and shoulders tall. And by the way, what does Israel do? They play the same game. First king. You know why they pick Saul? Because he's head and shoulders taller than everybody. He can fight these big people. God, our guy is bigger than your guy. No. And what does David say? What does David say? You come to me with all your armament, with all your stuff. I come to you in the name of the living God. So you uncircumcised Philistine. But these Philistines are, and Goliath's brothers are offspring of these big people. Okay, they're a hybrid. They're a hybrid people.
You know, to add more Twilight Zone stuff. Okay, my prayer partner in Little Rock had gotten into supposedly a healing group, and it turned out to be a really bad cult. And she got out of it. But the cult was run by someone who was trained by Anton LaVoy's daughter.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and so part of when she really realized that how evil it was that they were seeking, these creatures are still here on Earth. These half-breeds, literally, that are not all human. And the people in the cults know who these creatures are. So it's not just Old Testament.
No.
And I believe her 150%. So, you know, when you start looking at some of all of the UFO cult people, I mean, it's alive and well. The Dark Kingdom is alive.
Absolutely.